Alright, so this is Diesel for We the People News. We're still on the warrant thing. This is part 3. And I wanted to kind of give a attorney's point of view of this warrant things. Okay? And let him kind of speak out a little bit. Now, I'm not going to play the whole video, but it's just a taste of what we're talking about. Remember, I'm not an attorney, don't care to be an attorney. Take everything with me as a grain of salt. Do your own research to protect yourself from harm. Never just look straight forward. Always look around you to be able to protect yourself from outside forces that want to commit harm upon you.
Safe deposit boxes and how safe they really are. Harry sent me notes and Steve just sees article out of the LA Times, and this is an interesting one because it talks about safe deposit boxes, but also your right against, searches and seizures and so on. That's found somewhere in the Constitution. But after FBI seizure of safe deposit boxes in Beverly Hills, legal challenges mount, and the story is written by Michael Finnegan, a staff writer at the LA Times, and for example, retired flooring contractor was watching TV one night last month when he saw a news report about federal agents raiding a company in Beverly Hills. It's in a strip mall, and the company's called U.S. Private Vaults. That place lets customers rent safe deposit boxes anonymously. So think of it as your own little Swiss bank, but in Beverly Hills. So this man knew it because it's near his home. And for years, he's rented a small box there in which he keeps $60,000 in cash, gold, and silver, along with the certificate of title for his vehicle. He's 69 years old. He didn't want his name to be used because he's concerned about his safety. And he said he kept the stockpile of currency and precious metals since he got a little concerned during the 2008 financial crash. He said, you never know what's going to happen the way the world's going today. So, he's got a little money set aside. Well, that money and the title to his truck and the gold and silver, boom, disappeared in the raid. Agents with the FBI and Drug Enforcement Administration had a warrant, and they pulled each of every single storage box in that building, and they seized the contents, each and every one. They had a blanket warrant that said we can take every single box's contents, not any particular box, every single one. It took 5 days to empty all the boxes and inventory what they took, and then they took it all to an undisclosed warehouse. Prosecutors now say that drugs, weapons, and currency that drew the attention of drug-sniffing dogs were discovered. And they're going to make the argument that if this money smells like drugs, according to our dog, and if you don't believe him, ask him, by the way, we get to keep it because it's somehow connected to drug trafficking. I don't need to tell you this, but I will. They've done studies. They said that a surprisingly large amount of currency in circulation actually smells like drugs to dogs when asked. So to reclaim the property, if you are one of the people who had one of these boxes, you must notify the federal authorities, identify your...
We're going to pause there for a second. Alright, so we talked about a video a couple of videos ago. And see, the correct way of doing it once again is they got to issue separate warrants for separate names. If they had 1,000 boxes there, they had separate names. They have to do the investigation to be able to get the warrant for each box because it belongs to an individual. Once again, we talked about how if they come into my house but I rent a room out, they got to have a separate warrant to enter that one room. Well, it's supposed to be the same way this way. But because they stretched it so far out, and because of the name of war on drugs, which means that the Constitution does not apply. We're under martial law within the guidelines of war on drugs. Okay? So when they do anything with war on drugs things, it's martial law, y'all. You already know how a couple of videos ago I talked about martial law, how it's unconstitutional in the first place. All right. The Supreme Court ruled that on President Lincoln, and Lincoln ignored the well, I say ruling, but it's opinions. But because Supreme Courts are opinions only, Lincoln ignored it and created martial law. He didn't create it. He created it for our country, confiscated it from other countries, and used it upon us. Okay? Anyway, the warrant has to have its own separate warrant for each and every person in there. Alright? The people, whether the guys are criminals, whether I'm a criminal in my own house, they do have a right to come in with a warrant that they have proper cause. But they cannot enter the other room that I rented out without a separate warrant, and they have to have proper cause on the person that's renting that room. But that's not the way it's going. You know, judges giving orders for officers to go and talk to children in people's houses. That's not a warrant. And that's null and void. They still need a warrant, proper cause. So, take it as you may. Proceed forward.
And prove that you were the one who had the box and that you are the rightful owners of the items. And so, of course, if there's cash and you go, that's mine, they're going to say, prove it. So this actually has an element of civil.
Okay. Prove it. When do you have to prove it? Aren't we in a country that you're innocent until proven guilty? See how backwards this is, y'all?
Asset forfeiture in it, because they're saying, look, the money smells like drugs. Prove to us that it doesn't. For example, the raid now has set off legal challenges from 5 box holders who've come forward to say the government violated the Constitution's ban on unreasonable searches and seizures. And now a U.S. district judge declined one request for an emergency order that would have blocked prosecutors from using the box's contents as evidence. It also would have stopped the FBI from requiring box holders to identify themselves as a condition of getting their valuable stuff back.
P.S. That's a crooked judge. If he's doing that, he's not operating within the guidelines of the Constitution. He needs to be let go.
The judge, however, left open the possibility that the sweeping nature of the seizures violated the box renter's rights. So again, here's where the twist is going to be. You have a bunch of stuff. You put it in a safe deposit box. The safe deposit box is being held by a company that is a private company. Okay? So when the government comes in with a warrant and seizes that stuff, they're going to say, well, we seized it from the company, not from you. And they're actually going to claim that that makes a difference. But the judge ruled that that was simply the case with this one lawsuit. But there may have been as many as 1,000 boxes in the store. So there have been 4 or 5 lawsuits filed already. There could be as many as 1,000, presumably if everyone filed suit. There probably will be people who won't step forward for obvious reasons. And again, you know, it makes sense that if the police knew that there was a criminal and he was stashing stuff in this box, that they could get a warrant for that box. I think most people would understand that if the police had, you know, a reasonable suspicion, probable cause, and went to a judge and said, Judge, let me explain why we think there's stuff in this box. A search warrant for that box might make sense. Search warrant for all 1,000? No. So prosecutors have argued in court filings
I agree with
they're
you.
on solid legal footing because they can prove that the company, the landlord, the company that owns the boxes, is a criminal enterprise, and that most of the box holders were criminals hiding ill-gotten wealth, including the guy who just stashed $60,000 for a rainy day because of bad things that happened back in 2008. Now, the prosecutors also admit in court records that innocent people have been swept up in the case. No charges have been filed against any of the customers, however. So this is similar to where the police said, look, we know there's a couple criminals in this neighborhood. We're just going to do a dragnet sweep through the neighborhood and arrest everybody because there's a couple criminals in there somewhere. You go, you can't do.
By the way, he brought that up. And that's what they're doing with protesters and rioters. They're kind of going in there and sweeping everybody up. So the protesters is a victim from the government. And just kind of sweeping everybody up. One, that's unconstitutional. The police needs to do their jobs and arrest the ones that's actually rioters. The one that's causing harm. Not everybody. Yeah, it makes the job a little harder. But that's what they're paid to do. You know, they're not paid to go out there and make their jobs easier and then sweep everybody up, and then everybody has to, fork out money to be bonded out and court cost and fight this. It's all unnecessarily. Police is to go in there and grab the ones that is causing harm. Not everybody.
That? Legal scholars say the U.S. Attorney's Office in Los Angeles is testing constitutional restraints on the government's power to seize private property. In other words, they're pushing the envelope on this one. This was at bottom.
And this needs to be with states, too. This is not just with government. States is doing a lot of this crap, too. So, check with your local states and see what they're doing.
Executing a warrant at a business, said Orrin Kerr, a UC Berkeley law professor. What makes it different is that hundreds of customers had their own Fourth Amendment protected spaces in those safe deposit boxes. That's what makes this unusual. It's not just the business, it's also users storing their things, some engaging in criminal activity, others not, I assume. So again, there's two parties involved in each of these transactions beyond the government, okay? So there's the landlord that owns the strip mall business and actually is renting out these boxes, and then the people they're renting the boxes to. So a federal grand jury indicted U.S. private vaults last month on 3 counts of conspiracy to distribute drugs, launder money, and structure cash transactions to dodge currency reporting rules. This indictment listed 4 unnamed people affiliated with the business as co-conspirators, but has not charged them. More charges could be filed later. So they're claiming that the business was being run by guys who are criminals. That's what they're saying. They're saying, so if these guys are criminals and they're running this business, then the business they're running is also part of a criminal enterprise. Never mind the fact that they're simply renting space to people who are not criminals. Okay? In a court statement defending the seizure, FBI agents said that they found drugs, contraband of all kinds of sorts, gold bullion, and stacks of $100 bills.
Okay, so I'm going to pause it right there. And this is more along the lines of finding out, while we're talking about warrants, how corrupt it actually is and how our government has become King George III. And how history is repeating itself of the ignorance of we the people not putting our foot down, instead of saying, well, what do you have to hide? Just like the other videos, It doesn't have to mean that we're hiding something. It means we're standing up for our rights. So this is Diesel for We the People News, and I'm going to end it from here and to just basically giving you some ideas what's going on with our government. Bye, y'all.